Time for the deep dive into armor in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. I could talk about Skyrim or Morrowind, but honestly, their systems are the same as Oblivion, and they're just more convoluted. Like they use armor rating and then convert that into damage reduction. And this doesn't actually perfectly even represent Skyrim because if you're wearing a full set, like it adds 25 for this item and 25 rating invisibly for this item and stuff. And so we're just not going to even talk about Skyrim. But Oblivion, basically, armor is just a flat number. You know, if you use shield 10%, it makes you take 10% less damage, so it gives you more effective health. Yeah, at 50% armor, you're taking half damage, your effective health is doubled. Notice that at the beginning, the first 10 armor is only gaining me 22 health. It's almost nothing. In fact, the first 50, from 0 to 50, doubled my health. The next 35 armor more than tripled it from there. So the last points of armor are really, really valuable. Then it caps at 85. This is the cap. Anything past that is worthless. So all of them, Morrowind, Skyrim, and Oblivion, all have this system where armor is really, really bad early game. And then as you get to higher levels, it becomes incredibly valuable. And then after some cap that they don't tell you, it obviously gains no value. So it's back to worthless. Whatever. I'm not a game dev. It's not my problem. There's another system they could do. Some games like I think League of Legends, the way they make armor rating work is one armor rating increases your effective health by 1%, which is 2 of 200. 10 armor rating, 10%. 200 armor rating increases it by 200%, so forth and so on. So this is kind of the damage reduction there. They could just make a soft cap, meaning if you're wearing the best armor, you're going to have around 500 armor rating, and so you'd have still that 80% cap. It's a more intuitive system because it's always pretty much the equivalent effectiveness. There's no diminishing returns there because that's baked into these formulas. The only reason I have two columns here is because I was just double checking my math with different formulas, making sure I wasn't making any mistakes. But very simple armor systems exist. And it's not like Oblivions or Skyrims or Morrowinds are complex. They are simple. It's just they're very flawed in the way they work because of diminishing returns. And I'd prefer if they used a system like this. Obviously, I don't think they should let it get to 10,000, without like some kind of exploit or console command or something. Like maybe in a full set of Daedric armor, with heavy armor, with all the best stuff going on, the most you can get is 500 armor rating in the game. Just naturally from what's in the game. But whatever, this isn't that important. We are talking about what we do have in Oblivion. This is a deep dive, so let's keep it together. Okay, I like to start with experience gains. This is a lot of information, but we're going to compare light armor to heavy armor because that's kind of the big thing when we're talking about armor. If you've watched my videos, you know I prefer heavy armor because, well, it's better for a lot of reasons. But I want to highlight the pros and the cons of each. So first, light armor gains more experience per hit. If you get hit once, it's 1.5 experience. Heavy armor is 1.25 experience. These are the amounts you gain if you pick it as your specialization, as a major, or both your specialization and as a major, which I think you should do. You should make sure it matches it. So if you're going to do a stealth specialization, I would probably choose light armor. I just think stealth specialization isn't very good overall. So if you pick these, notice your total experience needed to go from 30 to 100, so on the bottom here, is a lot. It's a lot of experience. I made a mistake here. Why is this 9,700 and this is supposed to be a 30? We made a mistake. Let's fix it real quick, and this is supposed to be 99. Fixed. Okay. Your total experience needed to go from 30 to 50 is 1295. With light armor, if you pick it as a major and a specialization, that's 400 hits. With heavy armor, it's 497. The reason I pick these breakpoints, 50, 75, and 100, well, at 50, that's when you get to 95% spell effectiveness. Before that, you'll be lower than 95. You might be at 90, and actually you start at about 80% spell effectiveness. So this is really important if you plan on casting spells. And you should cast spells. If you don't, I think you're stupid. Or role-playing. But if you're trying to make a good character, you should always utilize what you can. You have mana, spend it. The next breakpoint is 75. This one's actually important because at 75, light armor weighs nothing. And heavy armor, it weighs half. That almost completely negates the need for feather with light armor, but with heavy armor, you might actually still need one. Let's look at, I have my movement speed pulled up right here. So at 75 skill, if you get Daedric armor, well, it's going to weigh 81 because at 75 skill, it's going to weigh half. So this is after being hit 1,700 times. Your weapon, let's say we have a Daedric longsword, weighs 48. So we're going to add, we'll say plus 48. So your total worn weight there is 129. So if I have 100 speed and 50 athletics, maybe my high elf has a movement speed of 500. With my worn weight of 129, that's no feather, it goes down to 328. That's really slow, where I need over 100 feather to negate that. That's going to be multiple spells. That's a lot of mana. That's a lot of work. Or a full high-level sigil stone, the best it can have is 125 feather. That would make a big difference. Your speed would go back up to pretty much full. But with light armor, if light armor weighs 0 and maybe I'm just using a bow, we'll say 22 worn weight, that's not a lot of feather that I have to do. And even if I'm not feathering, it's not really making a big difference. Just make sure you're not picking a Bosmer because they're very slow. And it's a disaster. So as long as you're not a Bosmer, you'll be fine. Okay, let's go back. So that means at 1,400 hits, someone in light armor will have something weigh nothing. Where to get to that point, heavy armor needs 3,700 hits. It's getting hit a lot. That takes a long time. Light armor, however, doesn't give you any armor. Gives you much less armor than heavy armor until you get to that 100. The final perk for light armor is it gives you a 50% bonus to the armor rating. After that perk, that's when light armor matches the defensiveness of heavy armor. So I put these shield values in here. Daedric has 75 and Glass has 50. If I do 50 times 1.5, that is when Glass will match Daedric. You need to have that 100th point. So everything before that, after 3,000 hits and not 3,115, Glass is way weaker than Daedric. So that 100 points is really important. It's also really nice for heavy armor because after you get to that, it doesn't weigh anything. Okay. So we talked about exactly how shield works, how those initial values aren't very good. And so you might be thinking, oh, well, it doesn't really matter at the beginning, iron armor is only going to be giving me 10 at my low skill, and light armor is only going to give me 5. That's almost no difference in effective health. It's not going to make a big difference, and I'll move faster, and I won't need much feather. And you're right. I still think heavy armor is better for 2 reasons. Well, 3, really. One is it's governed by endurance. Endurance raises your health. It's far more valuable than speed, which light armor is governed by. 2, that time from 75 to 100 skill, that's when the game is actually kind of hard. So if we go back here, when you're at 80 skill, you're mid-level. That's when the game is hard, and that's actually where heavy armor is going to be giving you a lot more protection, 50% more to be exact, and you really need that difference there, I think. Where after you've got all your skills to 100, I think the game gets easy again. It doesn't really matter. And you can just have enchants that make up all the difference. It doesn't, you have shock shield 25% from a sigil stone. Who cares? And there's a secondary third reason. You have to repair heavy armor way less. So I prefer heavy armor just for that. It's kind of a pain in the butt to repair your light armor all the time. Okay, I also want to talk a little bit more about experience here. If you don't pick it as, let's say you're a battle mage, and you're like, oh, I want to leave heavy armor as a minor skill, and I'm going to pick magic as my specialization. I'm a battle mage. To get to 95% spell effectiveness, you need to take 1,400 hits in heavy armor. That takes forever. Remember, 1,400 would almost have us up to 75 if you picked it as a major, where it weighs half. Beyond that, to get to max level, it takes 8,000 hits. That takes forever if you don't pick it as a major skill and a specialization. Compare that to 3,000. This is more than twice as many. It takes forever. You want to pick the armor you wear as your major skill and preferably as your specialization, but you could pick magic. That would be okay. Major is what makes the big difference. It'd be a pain to pick neither. 8,000 is so many hits. And last, these numbers at the bottom, this is for any skill. 5 to 50 only takes 1780 experience. It's not that much. 50 to 75 takes 3,000, and your last 25 points take over 5,000 experience. That's a lot of experience for the ending. You know, even the last 10 points here, I just wanted to highlight, these last 10 points are way more experience than your first 50 skill increases. So at the end, it slows way down. Don't think, oh, I'm at 56 destruction. I'm halfway there. No, you are not. You're not even close. Okay, I think that's all I really wanted to talk about with that. So next, we're going to talk about spell effectiveness. So before 50, you're going to be at maybe 80% spell effectiveness, between 80 and 95% spell effectiveness. When you get to 95% spell effectiveness, that is when you're at 50 skill. So when you get to 50 skill, you get to 95% spell effectiveness, and it will never go above that. With that, illusion spells, Calm, Command, Demoralize, Frenzy, and Rally don't work. They don't work on the highest level things because you need 100% spell effectiveness for those to work on the highest level things, because the count is like level 25 and that's the highest you can set it. 95% of 25 isn't 25, so it doesn't really work. The only exception to that is you can equip a shield as long as you have no weapon or a two-handed equipped. So that won't increase your armor value because it doesn't really count as you having the shield equipped. It won't affect your spell effectiveness, but it will give you whatever enchant you have from that shield. So like if you have Spellbreaker, it will give you that 30% spell reflect, even because it doesn't count you as wielding the shield, but you've like equipped it on your back basically. Okay, let's look at some common spells. So if I have 100 destruction, so this is a battle mage, I'm going to cast a shock, frost, and fire spell that deals 20 damage for 2 seconds. We'll say on touch. That costs 42 mana. If I'm a full mage who's not wearing any armor, that's going to do 120 damage. If I'm wearing full heavy armor, it's going to do 114. It's not really that different. At low armor skill, though, at 80% spell effectiveness, that's only 96. So you don't want to have low armor skill. You have to get it up to 50 or at least close to that, or it really starts to damage, like really lower how much damage you're going to do. I also wanted to highlight, if you use weakness skills, weakness spells, 100% weakness to fire, frost, and shock will double that damage. You'll do 240. If you add 100% weakness to magic, this spell will do 480 damage over 2 seconds. If you have 95% spell effectiveness, both the weakness spells will also not double. They won't double it. They'll multiply your damage by 1.95. So you'll only do 432. And if you're at 80% spell effectiveness, it's a massive difference. So if you have low spell effectiveness, like for whatever reason you just never got hit ever as a mage, don't wear heavy armor. Like it's going to make a huge difference. Or light armor. Don't wear any armor. However, you're probably noticing that 114 and 120 is not that big of a deal. I do think it is worth it. It's a better choice to pick Battle Mage because a full set of Daedric at 100 skill gives you 75% armor. That is 3 sigil stones worth of enchanted gear of armor, like the best sigil stones. That's a ton of defense. And if you have 100 skill, it doesn't weigh anything, so your encumbrance will be 0. You'll be moving fast, and it's barely hurting your damage. So I think it is worth it. Now, with that said, I want to talk about some things where it does make a difference. So at the beginning of the game, you start with we'll say, I didn't mean to do that. We'll hit undo. You have a 1 second on target flare spell. And, whatever, let's say we have 30 skill, so it'll cost 7 mana. At 100% spell effectiveness, that does 6. Early game, you're not at 50 heavy armor skill. So early game, your flare spell is only doing 4 damage. And there's another one. You have frost. You get cold touch. If you pick destruction as a major skill, you get this cold touch for 15 damage. Again, you're not right out of the sewers. If you're not wearing clothes, you can do 15 damage with that spell. But you actually have pretty low spell effectiveness if you equip a full set. Especially if you didn't pick heavy armor as a major skill, you're only going to be doing 12 damage. That's a pretty big difference there, 12 to 15. At least I feel that can make, you might take one more spell to kill people, and that can be annoying. Next, we have Two other common spells that I would cast. One, I wanted to just show you, if you don't have high alteration skill, Feather can be kind of expensive. Remember that guy in Daedric where the Daedric armor, what was it, 129, we said? To get rid of 129 worth of weight, 100 Feather for 2 minutes costs 48 at 25 skill. So unless you have high alteration skill, you know, if you have 90 skill, sure, it's only 13, I think it'll round to 14 mana, but you'll have to be casting that. And you'll have to cast that and another Feather spell, and maybe you'll combine it with something else, but it takes a lot. The other reason spell effectiveness can be kind of painful, I like to do really low magnitude, high duration spells like Restore Health or Restore Fatigue. If I cast, let's say I cast 2 different spells on myself, Restore Health, 2 points for a minute. So I'm thinking I'm always going to be running around for a minute where I'm healing 4 every second. You know, I've done that on my mage build. I did that on my Restoration Showcase build. I think I did like 3. Maybe I did 3. 2 different spells. The thing is, because I was wearing armor, instead of healing 6 every second, even at 95%, that's going to bring this from 3 to 2. So I'm actually only healing 2 every second. It's a massive cut. And so if I did 2 per second, for example, it would cut my magnitude in half, even having 95% spell effectiveness, because it would go from 2 to 1, because it rounds down. Spell effectiveness always, always, always rounds down. So I just wanted to highlight that with armor. So I think it is worth it to wear armor, because for the most part, you're doing higher magnitude stuff, and so it doesn't really make a big difference. You know, even if you're doing like 7, like that enchant I did, 7 and 3, like a 3-second duration spell, 63 to 54, I don't think it's that big of a difference. The last thing I want to say is, if you recognize this, if you know what 5% is, the difference between 20 magnitude for damage, 171, and 21 is nothing. That is the cutoff point. It is every 21st number that gets cut off of your damage. So, you know, if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to bump up my damage from 20 to 21 because it's good for like my magicka, don't do it if you're wearing armor. That's the one that gets cut off. Same with 41. You know, at 40, if I go to 41, 41, it's not going to increase that damage. 42 doesn't get cut off. So it's that 21st, 41st, 61st. Those are the magnitudes that get cut off by your spell effectiveness, because it always rounds down. All right, that's all I got. Thanks for watching.